Okay, good morning, everybody. My name's Chris Kilmurray. I'm the president of the South Brunswick Library Board of Trustees, and it's a position I hold with great honor. We're glad to have all of you here at our lovely library in South Brunswick. We're very proud of it. We get tremendous support from not only our congressman, our town council, our mayor and council, our senator, our assembly people, and we're very proud of our library. We're here today to remember September 11th. It's a day that, as we get closer to it, there's just so many memories that rush back to us. Last night I was at an informal get-together of an Emerald Society of Central Jersey. Those of you who know me know that I tend to enjoy those functions immensely. We had a real good time, and it was amazing the spirit that the police officers, it was North Brunswick, New Brunswick, South Brunswick, Franklin. It was just amazing the spirit that the members of the law enforcement community still have. They were talking about September 11th. Everyone had a story of somebody they knew, an act of heroism that was related to them, or their own deeds when they rushed over. People forget, so many officers from New Jersey, firemen, emergency services, and police from New Jersey rushed over to help out. And it was just amazing to see the spirit that our members of law enforcement still have. So while it's a sad day, in a strange way, I feel optimistic at the spirit that this country still has in overcoming that tragedy. And we're here today to remember it. I just want to briefly introduce some honored guests that we have here. Obviously, our Congressman Rush Holt is here today, and he's going to be doing a presentation for a wonderful lady named Suzanne Vitti. Suzanne, as I understand it, you started out at the library in the 80s. She was a page here at our library. And it's ironic because as you look around at all these shelves, they're filled with stories. They're filled with stories of fictional heroes, but also real-life heroes. And that humble start at the library, some 20 years later, in effect, you became a hero. And these shelves will be filled with the stories of September 11th. And that's what our library does. It's our center. It truly is the center of our community. Suzanne, you did so much for us that day, and Rush is going to talk more about it, but we greatly appreciate it. We have with us also our freeholder director, David Krabiel. Dave, it's always a pleasure to see you. We have with us, on behalf of our mayor and council, our deputy mayor, Frank Gambatiste. And Frank, if you could just say a few words welcoming us here, I'd appreciate it.
You know, Chris is right. You know, 9/11 is a day to honor heroes, but it is also a day of sadness and remembrance. And I think that's the big thing. People like Susan bring out the best in what our people are. And we want to, sometimes as politicians, we want to take credit for everything. But we can't function without the people that are in our town or in our city or in our county. I'm very, very proud of our congressman because he's always here for us. Freeholder director, every time I call him, and I call him a lot, whatever you need, Frank, let's see if we can work it out. He's always for us. So all the way down the line, we have nothing but people who are willing to work. So as we go through this day and all of the rest of the next week, let's remember with sadness, but with pride, the people whose lives saved us, I think, in some respects, because our security now picks up. So Congressman, it's a great pleasure to have you come up here and say a few words. I want to thank you again on behalf of the town. You're always here. Congressman was walking this morning, knocking on doors, if you can believe that. So he's here, and I thank you again for coming. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. I also just want to briefly introduce other members of the council. Carol Barrett is here with her lovely granddaughter, Katie, her adopted granddaughter, Katie. Katie, it's always a pleasure to see you. We also have other members of the Library Board of Trustees here. Ellen Gambatiste is here. Dalji Bayes is here. Mohammed is here. Who else is here from our library board? I believe we have 3 members of our board. Thank you so much for coming this morning as well. Linda Gray from the Friends is here, representing the Friends. And the Friends, without the Friends of our library, we'd be lost. They do so much for us, and it's always a pleasure to see literally our true friends for this library. They do so much for us. So I just want to, without further ado, I just want to thank everybody for coming. I also wanted to mention that I believe Michael Weaver, the legislative director for Assemblywoman Linda Greenstein, is here as well, and Michael will be having a presentation. So at this point, I'm going to turn the podium over to our Congressman Rush Holt. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chris. And thank you, Lorraine and the Library Board, for continuing to do all the good things that you do here. It's good to be here with Freeholder Director David Craybiel, who looks after his county, the finest county in the land, as he will tell you. That's and Mike, it's great to be here with you also. There are mixed emotions, very mixed emotions, about the date September 11th. Many Americans, particularly some of the surviving families, have said they wish it would just come and go this year. But there's too much good to remember for us to let it pass unnoticed. Yesterday, I was with other members of Congress. We had a joint session, ceremonial session at Federal Hall in New York City. We then had a laying of a wreath at the site of the World Trade Towers. And we were reminded of that site at Federal Hall where the Bill of Rights was presented, where President Washington took the oath of office, where all of those American values came together 212 years ago, I guess. And we were commemorating that, as well as the events and the victims of September 11th. Congressman Gebhardt reminded us of the individuals that we think of, whose memories come back to us. As he pointed out, on board the planes, there was a conservative columnist, a young father, a gay man. As Mr. Gebhardt said, e pluribus unum. And the widow of a firefighter, Susan Magazine, spoke to us over lunch, and she said, don't forget that what we're talking about is not the number of 2,800 people killed in the World Trade Towers, but rather the individuals of 2,800. Each one with a story, each one with a family. And really, that is what was really commemorated and embodied in the legislation that came out of Federal Hall 212 years ago. That this really is a nation of individuals. De Tocqueville talked about it. Churchill talked about it. So many people have talked about the fact that in America, whenever there's a crisis, or even whenever there's something that might have been a crisis, individuals, ordinary people, step up to do what needs to be done. We saw it on Flight 93. We saw it in the stairwells of the World Trade Towers. We see it every day in America. This is not a country of organizations. It's not a country that says, this organization over there will take care of it, whatever it is. It's a country of individuals who step up to do what they see needs to be done. Sometimes forming groups, sometimes forming organizations, but not with the idea of let them do it. It is rather let us do it. That's why there's so much good to remember from last September 11th. it is a reminder, once again, to what it is in America that makes America. It is 280 million individuals ready to do their jobs as citizens. You know, most of us will never have the opportunity, thank God, the need to face down vicious hijackers. But each of us has the occasion to show some heroism in our communities, facing down bigotry, in our workplace. You know, that's hard to do. But every day you'll find Americans who do it. Well, I wanted to recognize a representative of this kind of American can-do, let's-do attitude. On September 26th, I presented a statement on the floor of the House of Representatives, recognizing Susan Vitti, South Brunswick's own. I won't read the entire statement, but I do want to present it to her here as I delivered it. I rise today to recognize and honor the selflessness, volunteering spirit, and patriotism of Ground Zero volunteer Susan Vitti. Many of you know the story. Nursing student Susan Vitti on September 11th said, "What can I do? What should I do? What needs to be done?" Although the shock and enormity of the tragedy that day might have overwhelmed and incapacitated some who beheld it, Susan was determined to act. Almost the minute Susan Vitti heard reports that food and emergency supplies were needed, she began calling businesses to solicit donations. And to her surprise, maybe not to her surprise, but to her pleasure, businesses came through. And we saw that. We've seen the millions and millions of dollars that were donated. When I went into Ground Zero days after the collapse of the towers, I saw the food, the work boots, the gloves, the supplies that had been donated from all over the country, and the volunteers who came to work. Well, from that day until the recovery efforts were suspended at Ground Zero at the end of May, Susan Vitti worked with no thought of her own health and safety to assist emergency crews at Ground Zero. Food was being delivered to the site for the workers, but it was being dropped off several blocks from the site. The workers didn't want to leave their posts to feed themselves. So Susan brought the food to them, bandaged wounds, put drops in their eyes, distributed aspirin, gloves, goggles. When the winter months arrived, Susan drove herself around the outskirts, seeking out the groups of New York City police officers hovered over fires that they routinely lit in barrels to keep warm at their posts, delivering donuts, bagels, cakes, pies, cookies. She became known as the Entenmann's lady. I still have this image that was only described to me, I never saw, of her car filled floor to ceiling, driving at a slow enough speed that she put her hazard lights on because it was heaped with Entenmann boxes of donuts and cakes for the volunteers. So it is with that image that I recognized Susan on the floor of the House of Representatives. As to her volunteering spirit, Susan has said simply, "I'm an American. It's my duty." It's an honor to represent Susan Vitti in Congress. Once again, as I said on July 26th, I rise to commend Susan Vitti for her selfless and tireless efforts on behalf of the rescue and recovery personnel at Ground Zero, and for her volunteering and patriotic spirit. I wish her much success in her future endeavors, and by the way, since then she's graduated from nursing school. And I ask my colleagues to join me in recognizing her accomplishments. Susan?
This is a cross cut from the World Trade Center steel. I'd like to give you this piece of history.
I will display this in my office. In memory of those who perished, but also in recognition of those who serve and still serve.
I understand. Congressman, thank you so much. I also understand that Mr. Michael Weaver, the legislative director for our own Assemblywoman Linda Greenstein, has a presentation for Susan as well. And Linda, as we all know, is such a wonderful friend of our library and of South Brunswick. Mike, thanks for coming.
I will be brief this morning. I'm just here to represent Assemblywoman Greenstein, who could not be here today, but she wanted to send her best wishes and regards to all of South Brunswick and to, of course, Susan. First of all, I'd just like to say that Congressman Holt's remarks eloquently described and summarized our feelings and emotions for today's events. And I just wanted to say that Assemblywoman Greenstein wanted to share in that occasion by presenting Susan with this letter of thank you and commendation for the work that she did on September 11th, and also all during the recovery effort to help the workers at the Ground Zero site. So with this, I'd like to present Susan with a certificate of thank you from the representatives of the 14th District of the Legislative Group of New Jersey.
Thank you so much, Mike. We have one other presentation, and to introduce that, I'm going to introduce someone. It's Barbara Battles. She's a librarian at our reference desk. She does such a wonderful job. Indeed, our entire staff here does such a wonderful job. Barbara, if you could, thank you.
Thank you. We have one other volunteer here today who gave of her time in a different sort of way. Bronna Butler, she's a portrait artist who lives in Mountainside, New Jersey. She has a BA in Fine Arts and an MS in Accountancy from the University of Missouri in Columbia, and she worked for 21 years in finance, 14 in New York City. So she felt, when the disaster happened in New York City, she felt an affinity to the city and wanted to do something, but didn't have the medical training and the disaster training that was necessary to really do something on site. And as an artist, wanted to do something to really help out. So she painted the painting, the print of which is over there on the easel and will be there through September. That was the way she contributed to the effort, and she's done a lot of other artistic things, contributions. She's painted a portrait over there, an oil painting, a print on the desk of the Westfield Fire Station, the proceeds of which from a silent auction will benefit the Westfield chapter of the Red Cross. She did a portrait for the International Eye Foundation for their silent auction at their eyeball. She's donated prints of the rescue to all of the fire stations in New York City. So there's other ways that people can volunteer and contribute to the effort. And she's here today to sign some postcards, and she's here today to share some of her stories. She's a little reluctant to be praised for her volunteerism, as is Susan, but she readily admits that she's received more out of this experience than she has given because of all of the heartfelt stories that she has heard from all of the loved ones and things. She was at the family center with her portrait throughout the family center's existence at Pier 94, sharing stories with the family members and the rescue workers, and she was going to share some of that with us. So I give you Bronna Butler, our artist in resident today.
Hi. I'll try to talk into the microphone. After 9/11, I know I felt like a lot of other people, like, what can I do? And it was hard to know what to do, especially if you didn't have really wonderful skills, rescue skills. So, and also I was feeling a lot of the despair that people were feeling. And so I was wondering, what could I do to help? And I decided that I sort of had a feeling about the spiritual rescue. It was like a feeling, and I thought, I want to paint this feeling that even though our loved ones weren't rescued as we had hoped, they were rescued on a spiritual level, and I thought that would provide comfort to other people as well as myself. And so what I start normally when I paint, I have a sense of what the painting will look like. I can see it in my mind as an image, but in this case, it was a feeling. I felt a spiritual hand grab the soul and pull them back into eternity. So then I built the painting around that feeling. And so in the middle of the painting is the grasp of the hand, and that's the transfer back. And I wanted to communicate that to the family members. And the way it ended up at Pier 94 is sort of unusual. I was watching television on the Friday before the memorial service at Ground Zero, and they said, well, the families were going to be there. And I thought, well, I had just finished the painting. I finished it about the 20th, I guess, in that general area. And they said the families would be there, and I thought, well, that would be a good place for the painting. So I called the Red Cross, and I called the different offices, and of course on Friday night nobody was there. So on Saturday morning I said to my husband, I said, do you feel adventuresome? Let's just take the painting in. So we just loaded the painting in the car, and so we went to Pier 94 first because we thought, well, that's a good place to start. And so we walked in the door with the painting. It's big. It's like 24 by 36. So we're like walking in with it, and people are coming up to me. And my favorite comment was one woman said to me, she said, is that Gabriel? That's the spiritual figure. And I said, yeah. Everybody sort of sees the spiritual figure as somebody different, which is what I had hoped. And what is interesting to me is that many people feel right away they know. They don't even ask me who it is. It's like, I know that's, this person. And so I was very gratified that each person could see somebody for themselves. It was not so specific that it not everybody could feel a connection to it. But anyway, so I took it in, and of course there was a lot of security at Pier 94, and they said, well, let me get somebody from the Red Cross. So Susan Kessler came up from the Red Cross, and she said, do you want to donate the painting? And I said, yes. She said, well, the family members would be coming back from the memorial service at Ground Zero to Pier 94 for a meeting, and that's where they would be receiving the urns that the city prepared for them. So I thought that was a very good place for the rescue. So they put it there for the families when they came back. And I thought people might want to talk to me or say something, because it's a time when most people really need to connect and say, this is how I feel. So we created a website and an email address, and we put it with the painting so that people could contact us. And so they started contacting us right away. And so I ended up going back, and everybody wanted postcards. And so I ended up doing postcards and spending a little bit of time, and it was a remarkable experience because the volunteers, people like Susan at Pier 94 were phenomenal, and they were from all over the country, and people just dropped their lives and just came. And some people might have had only 2 weeks of vacation for their entire year, and they spent the whole 2 weeks there. And it was a hard 2 weeks for people, the sorrow, but the people were phenomenal, and that was an amazing experience. And I know Susan probably feels the same way. You just can't believe how giving people are. And some of the people that were still there were a number of firemen that were there that had been through so much, and they were still there meeting other colleagues and helping other people. So one young fireman, he had been both at Ground Zero and also for Flight 587, and he was still there waiting to help people when they came in to to give them encouragement, and you just don't know how people can do that, to be so giving, and then they're really wonderful. And some of the wives of the firemen were there, and the wives of the rescue workers, they contributed a lot also, because their loved ones were in harm's way, they were gone a lot, they were stressed, and so everybody gave a lot, even the people that you didn't see up front. Anyway, it was a remarkable experience, and I was grateful to be able to be a part of it, because it did mean a lot. And I don't know how other people feel, but it doesn't seem like it's been a year to me. It seems like it's been about 30 days. I don't know why, but it's probably going to take all of us quite a while to deal with it. And I hope that the hopeful message of the rescue helps people, and I hope the image sticks, because the images that we got from the remarkable footage of the photos and the film, I mean, it was remarkable, but you can't have that as your last image, because it's just too awful. So I'm hoping that the rescue provides for people that sort of a comfort, or a place, a closure, where they can, a safe place, if you will. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Again, thank you so much. That concludes our program. I just want to thank everybody for coming. On behalf of our director, Lorraine Jackson, our assistant director, Carl Heffington, thanks so much for helping to put this program together. On behalf of the library and our wonderful staff, thanks for coming. On behalf of the Friends of the Library and the Foundation, the Library Foundation, thanks for coming. On behalf of the trustees who are here, Muhammad Ashraf, Daljet Bayes, and Ellen Gambatese, thanks so much for coming. But most of all, thank you, Rush Holt. We couldn't have a better friend in this town and in this library. But most of all, thank you so much to Verona and Susan for what you've done for helping to lift us up and bring us together after September 11th. Carl?
I had very little to do with it. Chris Carbone and Barbara Battle had no putting the program together.
You're a gentleman. Barbara and Chris, thank you so much. We have a great staff here. Enjoy the day.
Okay, then I'll see you then, okay? Take care.
Very good. Yeah, we'll be in.
Yeah, sure.
Great, thanks. Thanks for coming.
You could do it now, the information about the organization and the date. Give it to Michelle, because I must definitely.
Shortly after September 11th, I was contacted by one of my constituents in Michigan about a unique way for Americans to honor those lost during the terrorist attacks, creating community service projects in their names. So we partnered with the Points of Light Foundation.
With our network of nearly 500 volunteer centers, we've made it easy for anyone to pay tribute and strengthen our communities. By creating service projects in the names of those who were taken on that dark day, we can be beacons of hope, courage, and unity throughout our nation.
As the sponsor of the Unity in the Spirit of America Act, signed into law by President Bush, I invite you to join us in this very special effort.
To participate in this volunteer program honoring those lost September 11th, please call or log on to our website.
Not one of us can change the world alone, but together, one project at a time, we can make a difference.
On September 11th, terrorists tried to change America forever. Well, they succeeded.